Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist, and today we're going to be doing some true Draco test hands. So this is a very interesting deck that actually is basically floodgates the deck to be able to put them all on your side of the field and shut down your opponent from playing Yu-Gi-Oh, which is a really interesting concept in this particular deck. It's a really good deck that is slowly getting cards off the ban list, but I wanted to show you guys how the deck plays currently before we get Masterpiece back, and then maybe when we get Masterpiece back, eventually I'll do some more test hands of this to see how the deck plays then. But without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell on there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards, like getting your name description every single video, getting a signed card sent in the mail, or even getting to request a deck profile every single month to your patron along with test hands. So without further ado, let's get straight on in this. And no, eyes are not deceiving you. We have no extra deck with this deck, which makes it a very budget build. So let's go ahead and shuffle the deck up and see what we can pull off. Like I said, you don't need an extra deck with this deck at all. It's just not necessary in this particular build. You can play an extra deck if you want to play Pot of Prosperities or play copies of Pot of Extravagance, just to be able to dig into the deck a little bit deeper. It is an option for you guys if you do want to go that route. I personally don't, but some players actually do and prefer that particular build. So let's go ahead and cut the deck and see what we can do. And I am only playing 6 main deck monsters, so you might see hands where you're just setting a bunch of floodgates to kind of stall your opponent out until you finally get one of your monsters to start going after your opponent. Well, you technically play 8 because you would play a Terraforming and Draconic Diagram that can pop cards in your hand or your field to be able to get a true Draco from your deck to your hand. So let's go ahead and see what we can do with our first test hand, because like I said, it's a really interesting deck, and you guys requested this one like crazy in the community poll for me to actually do a deck profile of it, and I was like, well, if they want to see a deck profile of it, let's go ahead and do test hands too. So let's go ahead and see what we can do with this particular deck. So we're going to go ahead and draw into a copy of There Can Only Be One. That is great. Skill Drain, that is fantastic. True Draco Apocalypse, Pot of Duality, and a Summon Limit. This is great for an opening hand because you have multiple floodgates your opponent, and you can dig into the deck really deep. Because think about it this way, guys. You have 8 cards in your deck that you can grab out of there, and then you also have just drawn 4 or 5 out of the deck, which is basically taking you to a 35 card deck, and then you're grabbing 3, so you have a bunch of chances to be able to get a monster in this particular hand. So we're going to go ahead and drop the copy of Pot of Duality, which we're going to reveal True King Return, and a copy of Solemn Judgment, which is fine. We totally have plenty of plays in this hand. We're going to go ahead and put those back on the top of the deck and then shuffle it up really quick. And we're going to go ahead and set 5 and pass. Like, that's what the deck does. You just go ahead and set 5 and pass. It's totally fine. You guys are looking at this and going, wow, you didn't get a monster, but that's fine. You don't super need it. You have plenty of plays to be able to go off, because you're going to go ahead and set the Summon Limit, True Draco Apocalypse, the copy of Skill Drain, the copy of There Can Only Be One, and the Solemn Judgment against your opponent. The only other play that you could have done is grab the copy of the True King's Return, which would have let you target a True King in your graveyard and special summon it, but it's not super beneficial right now to be able to grab that card at the current moment because you don't have a monster to summon. But when you go ahead and pass against your opponent, you're going to go ahead and, unless they have Arby's Feather Duster, which at that point, or Lightning Storm, you're kind of, Judgment or nothing. You go ahead and you can Judgment them with that, or you can start activating your back row with There Can Only Be One, your copies of Skill Drain, and your True Draco Apocalypse, which if this card is activated, you can target 1 True Draco that you control, True King or True Draco that you control, and destroy it. And if you do, attack and defense of all the monsters your opponent control is halved. I'd probably keep that one set just to kind of bait my opponent out. But when you go into play like this, you have all sorts of crazy stuff. They can't activate monster effects, they can't summon more than twice, and they can't summon any monsters of the same attribute or same typing. So you have all these insane plays. When we draw into the next turn, I'm going to go ahead and cut the deck really quick and see what we can actually do with this particular next draw, which we're going to draw into a copy of Judgment, which is not going to super help us, but we have another Judgment to kind of set. If we draw into the next turn, we draw into another Judgment, which does kind of hurt us in the long run, which this deck can do that. That's why a lot of people play Inspector Border in the deck as well, because it can get you a free monster on your side of the field. The only other card that I will mention you guys that this deck has a really tough time is Dango Sekka. That is terrible when your opponent activate or some normal summons a Dango Sekka, because you have to Judgment it or you lose, because it's terrible. So let's go ahead and shuffle the deck up and see what we can do for the next test hand. Like I said, though, it wasn't terrible because you had all those floodgates against your opponent. The only thing that's a downside is we didn't draw into a monster. If you would have drawn into a monster, that would have been insane. That field would have been crazy good. But let's go ahead and see what we can do with another test hand. So we're going to go ahead and draw into a copy of True Draco's Disciple. We got Dynamite Knight. That's great. Imperial Order, True King's Return, and a copy of Diagram. Okay, this is a hand. This is a hand for this deck. So what we're going to do is go ahead and activate Diagram. Diagram is very important to activate because all the True Kings and all the True Dracos gain 300 attack. And also, you can target a card in your hand and destroy it. And if you do, then you get to add one other, you get to destroy a card in your hand, and if you do, you get to add one True King or True Draco card from your deck to your hand. So you can pop something like your copy of Imperial Order, you can pop your True King's Return if you don't feel like you need it, you can pop anything that you need and just get rid of it and grab something else that you might need. So let's go ahead and pop something like, for example, go ahead and normal summon out your, or not normal summon, activate your copy of Disciples of the True Draco Phoenix, and then go ahead and tribute that card to summon out your copy of your Dynamite Knight. Now, you didn't see that wrong. That's actually the way the deck plays. You will actually tribute your spells and traps that are in the continuous spell and trap card zone to normal summon out your copy of your True King monster or your True Draco monsters from your hand. That's the way the deck plays. It's very interesting. Now, your copy of Dynamite Knight's effects will go off, and when this card's tribute summoned, you get to take one True Draco or True King continuous spell or trap or spell or trap card from your deck and place it on your field or add it to your hand, which is really cool to be able to activate it or set it, which is really good just to be able to grab the cards that you need. I want to grab Apocalypse from my deck to be able to put that card on my side of the field just to be able to grab an additional play. So I'm going to go ahead and add Apocalypse and be able to activate that card, and then I'm going to set two other cards on my side of the field, which is the copy of Imperial Order and the copy of my True King's Return, which is going to help out a lot in the long run. Because now I'm going to pass against my opponent, and immediately at the beginning of their turn, I'm going to Imperial Order, and no spells can be activated. You negate the effects of spells. Now, you can hold this if you want to, because we didn't use it to be able to give you additional plays, or you can leave it on the field in hopes that your opponent will destroy your Imperial Order with a card to be able to get you additional plays as well, where you're going to get back your copy of your spell cards. You can also activate your Apocalypse or your copy of Return if your opponent is going to target one of your True Dracos or True Kings. You can special summon that card in defense position, and also for the rest of the turn, you cannot special summon, which is fine. Also, if you want to, during your turn, you can pop this card as well to grab another card from your deck to your hand, like a copy of one of the other True Draco cards, like a copy of, say, for example, you could grab off of popping this card on your side of the field, Heritage, which would get you additional draws, which would be an additional play. So let's say we did that instead. Instead of passing turn, you're going to back up to the main phase of your turn, use your copy of Diagram, pop this card, and then immediately grab from the deck a copy of Disciple. So once you grab, or Heritage, once you grab the copy of Heritage, Heritage says during the main phase, you can draw cards equal to the number of True Draco or True King monsters that were types that were sent from the field to the graveyard this turn. So we had two different types, which was our copy of Disciple and our true copy, or our copy of our Dynamite Knight. So we had two different types that were sent to the graveyard. So we're going to get to draw one, and then we're going to get to draw two, which is our copy of the Ignis Teeth, which is pretty good. We're going to go ahead and set our copy of Judgment, and then once we set our copy of Judgment, we've already normal summoned for the turn, so you're not going to get to normal summon this card, except, guess what? During the main phase, you can tribute one True Draco or True King monster face up, and if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can immediately this card resolves during your main phase tribute summon. So I can send this to the graveyard and then tribute summon out my copy of my Ignis Teeth if I want to, which gives me additional plays. So don't just settle. What I was trying to show you guys was don't just settle for a couple of back row cards if you have Diagram. That's very important to not just settle for the Diagram, because you can get more advantage if you want to go for more advantage, which is why I wanted to show you guys that particular way. So the copy of your Ignis Teeth will go off and let you either add or set a copy of one of your True Draco cards, which you could grab your copy of Disciples, which you've already activated Disciples this turn, so you can't activate this card, but you can only activate each effect of this card once per turn. We just activated it on our side of the field as a continuous spell, and it has the ability you can target a True Draco or a True King in your graveyard and shuffle them into the deck, up to 3 of them, and then you get to draw a card as well. So you can activate the Disciples again, And then you can target all 3 of these cards in your graveyard and be able to draw an additional card. So we're going to shuffle all those cards back into the deck really quick, and we're going to draw an additional card, which is going to help us out in the long run. Just get that little bit more advantage, which we're going to draw one more card, which is Pot of Duality, but we don't have any back row to go. You could have held the copy of your Solemn Judgment if you want to, and then drop your copy of your Duality to draw 3 more, which would have got you another copy of Heritage. And at this point, you can put these in the graveyard and put your Metaverse back in your deck, and you have even more plays. Now, we ended with the Ignis Heat. You have the Draconic Diagram. This is still turn 1, I will mention, that you've gotten all this advantage. So we're going to go ahead and set your copy of Judgment on your side of the field, and you have all these different plays that you can go off with. So once you go ahead and pass, now you can activate the copy of Imperial Order, and now you can activate the copy of Apocalypse and your copy of Return later on to be able to get this back if it gets destroyed, which is additional plays in this particular deck. Also, your copy of your True Draco Apocalypse lets you target one other True King or True Draco monster you control, destroy it, and if you do, half the attack of all the opponent's monsters. So if your opponent summons something big, you can pop this on your side of the field since your copy of Imperial Order is negating it already, half the attack, and then you're still good. You also have the copy of Judgment to stop your opponent, which is basically the way the deck works, is it's trying to slow your opponent's game state down to the point that you can use your copy of your True Dracos to be able to attack at your opponent. So that's really the way that the deck plays. Let's go ahead and do one more test hand to see what we can actually do, at least one more test hand to see what this deck can actually pull off, because that was really good. That was really good at what the deck could do, to shuffle those cards back, to add those cards back to your hand, to be able to shuffle stuff back and draw additional plays. I have to say, one of my most memorable duels in my entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Was on Yugioh Pro, and I was playing Black Wings, which is my favorite deck, playing Black Wings against a True Draco player, and it lasted a long time because this deck can really go into the grind game. You wouldn't think with the amount of monsters it plays it could, but it really can go into the grind game, which is really amazing. It was when Masterpiece, I think, was at 1. So let's go ahead and see what we can do for at least one more test hand of this deck. We're going to go ahead and draw into a copy of Terraforming, which is great. Apocalypse, a copy of Apocalypse, Heritage, and a copy of our Ignis Heat, which is really good, actually. So what we're going to do with this particular hand is immediately activate that copy of Terraforming, because you're going to want to grab your copy of Diagram as quickly as possible, which I actually saw it peeking up. So let's go ahead and shuffle the deck really quick and see what we can do. So we're going to go ahead and activate our copy of... You could activate the copy of Heritage immediately if you wanted to, and then activate your copy of Diagram, and then you could use your copy of your Apocalypse if you want to and set it to your side of the field if you want to do that. And then during your main phase, you can draw cards equal to the number of True Draco or True King cards that were sent to the graveyard this turn, and then during the main phase, you can normal summon additional time if you want to. Now you can activate the copy of Diagram and pop this card on your side of the field, and once you pop that card, you're going to immediately be able to grab another card, which is your Disciple, and then you can immediately just activate the Disciple on your side of the field, which is one card sent, and then you contribute this card to the grave to summon out your copy of your True Draco Warrior, set your other Apocalypse, and then use this to be able to draw 1 and 2, and then set 2 more Floodgate kind of cards to your side of the field and pass with a really simple field. Don't ever underestimate your copy of Heritage. It is ridiculously good. So once you go into your opponent's turn, you're going to go ahead and activate There Can Only Be One, and you have the Judgment as well, and the Apocalypse can pop your copy of Heritage, will get you a Spell and Trap pop, which is really cool, and also reduce the attack of all monsters they currently control by a half, which is really good. The Judgment is going to slow their game state down as well, and There Can Be Only One is going to make it so that they can only control one of each type, which is also really good in this particular deck. Also, your copy of your Draconic Diagram is going to increase this card to 2,700, which is going to be a little bit difficult to get past because they're going to have to summon something with 54 in order to get past this if your Apocalypse does go off, which is really good. So let's go ahead and see what we can do for another test hand, like I said, or even go into the next turn. If you go into the next turn, you're going to draw into another Ignis Heat, and at this point, you contribute the Apocalypse if you activated it, and be able to, if you activated the Apocalypse on your turn, you could go ahead and tribute that card, or tribute There Can Only Be One. I would probably tribute the There Can Only Be One if you can do that. I would go ahead and tribute that card on my side of the field, and then immediately I would get to set a card on my side of the field. Also, don't forget about that. You actually do get to set a copy when the first Ignis Heat was summoned, you do get to set on your side of the field or add to your hand another copy of one of these cards, which could be your Disciple of the True Draco Phoenix, to be able to set on your side of the field. I actually totally forgot to do that, which makes sure that when you summon these, you do get your playoff. That was my mistake, guys. Don't forget about that. So let's go ahead and see what we can do for another test hand. Let's go ahead and do at least one more. One more. I always do that. I always say, let's do one more, and then it always ends up being one more after the one more. Let's go ahead and see what we can do. Because once I get into doing these videos, they're really fun, actually, to actually see what you can pull off with some of the decks. So let's go ahead and shuffle it up really quick and see what we can pull off. And like I said, guys, it's a lot about the grind game that you're trying to pull off, because there's no OTK potential in this deck. There's zero OTK potential. You cannot OTK in this deck. So let's go ahead and draw. We're going to draw into a Judgment, a copy of Imperial Order, Disciple, Heritage, and a copy of Heritage. Now, this is where the deck bricks a little bit. If you're going first, you're in a really bad spot. If you go second, you're going to draw into a Demise and you're going to be okay. If you go second, we're going to go second. At first, you would have lost. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. You probably would have lost because you would have Judgmented and your opponent would have done stuff, and then you had the Imperial Order that you would have hoped to at least stop them with the Imperial Order from popping all the way off. And then if you go into your next turn, you're going to draw into this card and you're going to be kind of screwed. But if we're going first or we're going second, we're going to go ahead and set this all on the field except for one card, which I'm going to keep one of my Heritages in my hand, and I'm going to Demise to be able to draw two, which is going to give me two copies of Erupt, and I'm still going to be kind of in a bad spot because I don't have anything to summon, and I don't really have anywhere to go from here. I'm going to go ahead and send this to grave, and at this point, I'm going to be at the mercy of my opponent with all I have on my side of the field, because at this point, you don't have a lot to be able to do. So we're going to go ahead and pass that one and say that was a bust, which the deck can do a little bit with your Dynamite Knight. I mean, you got to remember I believe two of the 5 cards, one of them is banned in the main deck that are monsters, and one of them is at 1, so you're kind of in a bad position already. So let's go ahead and see what we can do for one more test hand of this deck and see what we can actually pull off. Which this deck, like I said, is very simplistic in what it's trying to do. You're trying to get one monster on your field and put a bunch of floodgates out. Let's go ahead and shuffle it up and see what we can do for one more. We're going to go ahead and draw True Draco Apocalypse, Ignis Heat, True Draco Apocalypse, Dynamite Knight, and a Diagram. Okay, this is better. Diagram pops Apocalypse that was set the Apocalypse, pop it on your side of the field, and then once you do, you can immediately add from your deck to your hand. Heritage will activate, or actually don't add the Heritage, add a copy of Disciples, grab the Heritage off the Ignis Heat. We're going to go ahead and grab Disciples because I don't mind sending Disciples to the graveyard, and since it's sent to the graveyard, I can then use my copy of Heritage that I'm going to grab to be able to draw 2. Go ahead and activate Disciples, tribute it off, summon this card to your side of the field, and then grab the copy of Disciples and activate that card on your side of the field, and then be able to draw 2, which is going to be super helpful for this particular play because you got 2 cards in the graveyard, and they were 2 that were sent to the graveyard. So you're going to go 1, and you're going to go 2, and then you're going to set this on your side of the field. And if you want to, you can tribute off the copy of Heritage and be able to get you an additional normal summon of the Dynamite Knight, and then set your copy of Return, which is going to help you out a lot in the long run because you're going to get 2 monsters basically for the price of 1. And you have the summon limit to drop against your opponent, which is going to make it so they can't summon more than twice. You have the Apocalypse that can make it so it halves the attack. You have the Judgment, and you have the Return, which can revive one of these with the copy of Return. And the copy of Judgment can negate anything, which is pretty good. So your opponent's going to have to deal with 2 monsters with 2 monsters, and they're going to have potentially a really bad time with Apocalypse because Apocalypse is going to be able to pop a card and be able to get you additional plays, which is really good. So basically that's the way the deck works. As you guys can see, you get a bunch of back row and then you pop off, and it's really one of the only decks in the entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh! That just doesn't need an extra deck. It's very unique in that aspect that you just don't need an extra deck at all, and it's really, really good because of that, because it's very budget. You don't need a lot of cards. You can get the whole main deck for like $50, which is what's really cool about it. But that's pretty much it, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell next to the bar notification squad, and definitely tell me what you think of this video down in the comments down below. And I hope you guys did enjoy this one, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.